Welcome everyone. In this video I'm briefly highlighting how we can load the institutional grammar layers for the coding in Inception. Inception itself is a general purpose semantic annotation platform which is reasonably recent and provides a lot of additional features that allow recommendation or learning, active learning in particular by the platform itself. But in this video, we assume that you have a running instance of Inception. Note that it's frequently updated, that you have access to, and of course also have the ability to create projects in. But before you can actually create a project that you can annotate with the IG 2.0, for example, you will need to download the institutional grammar profiles, or rather layers, if you like, that you provide to Inception in order to entertain the actual coding. Note that you will need to do this every time you create a new project in Inception, and of course if you want to update the layers that you want to use for the IG 2.0 coding. To do so, you first need to navigate to the URL github.com/institutionalgrammar/ig-inception-layers and then /releases, and you'll find the latest release there as well. Note that you can of course also find all historic releases, which is useful if you, for example, need to work with a dataset that has been encoded in a previous version of the Inception layers. Those layers will, or those releases will stay here for reference, so it will be easy for you to back reference whenever you need it. Also note that when you start encoding with a particular layer configuration, that you take note of which version it is. This versioning is of course contained in the layers itself, but it's good for reference for your own purpose to keep track of this. However, to get started, you will need to download the layers. So you simply click on source code zip here. So in case you land on the main page of the Inception Layers project, you'll see some description here, and you navigate to releases, and you'll find immediately the first release here, and generally you would want to work on the latest release. Click on assets and then download the zip file, and you save it of course in the folder of your choice. What you need to do then is of course to extract the zip file, because that's where the actual layers are contained. You can of course do it in the same folder and show the contents. And once you have done this, you're ready for the actual import in Inception. So now we assume we have a running instance of Inception that we want to use for this purpose, such as this one here, and we call it our first project, for example, and save it. And then you will have the option to perform a large number of different tasks, and the ones that are relevant for us start here. We click on layers, and we see a set of default layers that are provided by Inception out of the box. But of course we want to provide or now use our layers that we just extracted. So you click on import and then the select button, and this navigates. So here you directly want to navigate to the folder you've just extracted, subfolder IG core, and you choose all the JSON files that are annotated with this icon, but of course have the extension JSON. Click on open and import. Once this is done, you should see here on the left side a lot of additional layers. They all have the prefix IG for easy identification that you can then use for your actual encoding. Alongside, there will be a set of text sets that are already imported as part of the layers, so you don't need to worry about this, but just for your reference, there's a considerable number of different text sets that comes along with it as well. In addition, we provide baseline coding guidelines that just highlight how we can operationalize, or how the procedural approach for coding in Inception can work with those IG 2.0 layers. Note though that you may have project-specific specifications that are more refined, so those are more general purpose. But in any case, you will want to import those as well. And we also have constraints. Constraints are mechanisms by which the user interface is somewhat made more dynamic in Inception, so it's quite useful for usability purposes. However, you don't need to be concerned with the actual content of this. So once we have done this, we have prepared our baseline project. The only thing we're really missing is then of course a file we want to potentially encode. So for this purpose, I've just put here a demo file under this very folder, IG example statements. That will of course be the file that is provided either by yourself or by your project manager, if you like, and contains the statements that are to be coded. So at this stage we're ready and can actually start encoding outright. So to do so, we basically move into the first project here in this example, and you will not see many of those selections or options here if you are just have coding privileges, but this is the manager view right now. But you can click on annotation, then of course choose the file of choice, and you should see the elements or sentences that are to be annotated. On the right side here, you'll then find the IG layers that are used for the actual annotation, such as, for example, if we assume that we are simply annotating the second statement here, we can choose IG core regulatory syntax and suggest that public employers are attributes, for example, and so on. With the deontics here. Note that this video is not about a comprehensive introduction about encoding, but merely about setting up projects. But it also includes, of course, a sanity test as to whether your setup is successful. So, in addition to, of course, this annotation and the different layers that you can use here, you can find reference to the coding guidelines where useful. They are provided here. There can be multiple different coding guidelines, of course, project-specific ones and more general ones, but they are referenced here in this particular instance. And with this setup, you're basically ready to do proper encoding of institutional statements. You may want to vary the number of rows that you want to see. That is, of course, depends on personal preferences, but this way you can have a more comprehensive overview, for example, of all the statements you are about to code, of course, in the first place. And with this overview, we conclude the introduction to the use of Inception for the purpose of IG 2.0 and specifically loading of the IG 2.0 layers. In further videos, we'll outline specific use cases and the application of the coding, syntactic coding principles as applicable in IG 2.0 in the context of Inception.